Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Bruce McDonald, and this is, of course, the Talamanca Review. I hope you're all doing well today. I hope you've seen something today or felt something today that made everything worthwhile. And by that I mean that you just feel good about being alive. Now, today I just kind of want to wax a little bit and maybe expunge some emotions that I'm dealing with, some feelings I'm dealing with. Oh, buddy, I want you to go out. Come on. Out, out. Okay, well, if you're gonna stay, I'm shutting the door. You can go on the sofa. Rules. Only one dog allowed off the leash at a time. So we don't. Oh, now he wants to go out. Okay, come on, buddy. Katie, come on. Go see Brandon. Go see Brandon. Man, he's getting big quick. Love these guys. Love them all. Got another cat knocked up. I got rid of three kittens. So that's pretty good. The whole litter, one person is taking the whole litter. But then I got another mother ready to drop any day now. Unregulated, unlicensed cat production up here in the Talamanca Mountains. Some of them go, I've told you guys this story before, some of them disappear, some of the males, and you see them months later, sometimes a year later, they come back home. And they're the ones that come back to knock up all the females. And one male cat will come in and knock up like three cats, and then I'll have three litters. And these are small cats, so the litters are usually two or three cats, you know. It's kind of nice having all the life around me here, the children and everything. I talk about this a lot, but it's kind of my warm up to the Talamanca Review, right? It's just getting me used to speaking, hearing my own voice. It's just part of the ritual. We're breaking ground on Saturday on the roundhouse on the reserve. Or they're gonna clear the lot where they're building it. Everything worked out perfectly there. It's exactly where I wanted to build the house. And it had to do with um, sort of family politics, on the reserve, because whoever gets the house close to them is going to be a major part of the tourism. And I guess I don't know how it's going to work out, but they're probably going to get um, paid more or interact with the tourists more. So there's a little bit of politic to figure out there, but we got it all figured out. Let me get the volume here. It's still a bit low. Now, get that down a bit. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit or quite a bit about the situation in the world. And in a sense, it was inevitable. I don't think the situation that we're in now was escapable. It just has to do with the energies and the idea imprints in the collective consciousness of the West and the Middle East, and I place most of it squarely at the feet of the Abrahamic system, which I think is basically E.T. write books. And that's what I think the Abrahamic system is. It's E.T. write books. Okay, you can call them angels, you can call them whatever you want. Okay, there are spiritual beings. The creator could not create and maintain all the dimensions without establishing, let's call them incarnations. Okay, so this is important, okay? Because this is going to blow your mind, and it's going to force you to rethink everything you think you know about eschatology and religion and everything. So, when the creator sets up a universe, if that universe is going to have multiple dimensions, and if that universe goes all the way into a third dimensional expression, some universes don't. They're just spiritual and psychic, and there's no material expression. But we live in a fully materialized universe, a 3D reality, molecules and atoms. Okay? So when the creator creates a universe, the creator has to create roles or positions for governance. And believe it or not, the entire system is meritocratus, meaning that you get what you deserve based on your work, your talent, and all the natural abilities that the creator has given you in a lifetime. And those things are given to us based on our merits. Everything we get in life is based on our merits. Everything we experience in life is based on our merits. And the merit system spiritually is about the ongoing mission down here, which is the movement of an individual perception to the realization that it is connected to the perception of God and can know the perception of God and experience it. And this is what deep prayer and deep meditation and deep mystical practice is about. It's not so much about knowing the perception of God, it's about having your own perception ascend through all the dimensions to experience the perception of the divine. Okay? Now, in this regard, human beings are one of the most powerful things in this universe. Now, that may not seem like much, but, or you may not understand how to interpret that, but it's true. And the reason that we're so powerful is that we are everything in instantiation while we're in a body. So when you pass, you're missing a physical body. So you're an incomplete expression of the creation. You understand? So you have your astral body, that's your sort of, from the perspective of physical eyes, it's a translucent body, it looks like a ghost. Okay, but from the perspective of the astral, there's a physicality to it. You can be injured, you can be hurt, all kinds of things can happen to you, even in an astral body. You can be astrally murdered as well. The astral is not an eternal body, it's subject to the laws of entropy. This is a very important concept to understand. Okay? Now you may ask yourself, Bruce, how do you know these things? Well, the same way I know everything, and I would say that the Holy Spirit leads me to it. And if you're in this game long enough, as I have been, you will develop methods to examine a truth that comes to you internally. So something comes to you internally. You see it in meditation. And this means that when you're in samadhi, you're not. Now, what is samadhi? Well, I mean, if I go right off of the Indian language, it probably won't match my definition. So maybe I need to come up with a new word or explain more specifically in my own language what I'm talking about. So when you're meditating, when you sit down to meditate, you close your eyes. You can either just go quiet and deal with all the noise in your consciousness, because when you begin a meditation, there's a lot of noise in your consciousness. Like, it's the same thing as going to bed after watching a TV show. The images of that TV show are going to flash around in your internal vision for a while, because that's the last thing your brain engaged, okay? And so when you begin a meditation, it takes a while to clean up the inner vision, because it's just going to be your mind like blah, 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 blah. Why did she do that to you? Why did he do that to you? Blah, 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 blah. That mechanic's ripping you off. Blah, 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 blah. I can hardly wait till season 2 of Daredevil Born Again starts on March 24th. It's just any kind of nonsensical thing will pop into your mind. And then for me, generally, it takes about 10 minutes to warm up. 10 minutes. And then what happens is that the awareness of my body begins to disappear. Okay, so I don't feel my feet anymore. I don't feel my hands anymore. I don't feel the slight discomfort of my position. I generally sit in a half lotus, which if you just sat down that way to watch a movie, you would change your position in 5 minutes. It's not comfortable. And you get tightness in your knees, and it feels really awkward. But as you start to slip into non-body awareness, it's the perfect position to be in. And then when you come back into the body, then it takes me like 30, 45 seconds to unknot myself, because you got to do it very slowly, very, very slowly, because you've been sitting in a certain way with your legs crossed and your heel folded up over your left calf. And the blood flows differently, so you have to just like very carefully break out of that position. Like I wouldn't be able to. I would probably miss a phone call on my iPad if I came out of that position immediately because I heard ringing. I wouldn't be able to stand up because I wouldn't have blood in my feet. I'd fall down. It's not that my legs are asleep the way your extremities fall asleep. Anyways, enough about the physicality of it. Sometimes these tangents just get stupid. I can't stop myself. But what happens is then you get light. And that's when all the magic in meditation happens. It's so it's like, when when you're waking up in the morning and your alarm clock goes off and you wake up, okay? But you don't want to get up. And so if you're using your iPhone as an alarm, you hit the snooze and you got another 10 minutes. Now, in that 10 minutes, you go right back to a kind of a sleep right away, but it's not quite sleep anymore because your mind's been woken up, your senses have been engaged. But that's the closest thing I can give you if you don't meditate. That's the closest thing I can give you to what it feels like. Okay? But it's actually much more deeper than that, and your internal awareness is much more sharper than that, even though your connection to the physical body is even more detached than when you're in that semi-sleep between the snooze buttons. So that's what I'm calling samadhi. It's where your alert consciousness, you know who you are. I'm me, I am, but you have no body consciousness. And then at another phase of the meditation, consciousness of your mind goes away too. And that's the real thing. And then you're pushed into this space where you're aware that you exist, but you're not really aware that you exist at the same time. It's similar to how I described going into the dark world when I wrote Light of Darkness, which, and I would consider that a meditative experience. I would consider that another dimension of experience. But the dark world, it doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have anything in it. What it does is when you go into the dark world as a consciousness, what that does is it illuminates your human perception to see the darkness in the world. People can't hide anymore. You see their darkness right away. And everybody has darkness, and I have darkness, so there's no need to judge. Everybody's allowed to learn and experiment down here. The only thing, like the rest of you, that really gets under my skin is like the harming the children. I mean, I could hack those people apart with a machete. If you told me tomorrow it was legal, I would start doing it. Hacking them apart with machetes. Okay? The child torturers, the pedivores, and the people like that. Okay? But it's not legal, it's not lawful, and the law has a reason for existing in its present state, and in a sense, even spiritually, you kind of have to obey it. So I don't hack them to pieces. But other than the really, really egregious left-hand satanic stuff, nothing people do bothers me. If a high-level narco trafficker visits my house and has a coffee with me, he's just like any one of my neighbors. Sure, he kills people. And I'm not saying this happens all the time, but it's happened. And sure, they kill people. But I mean, you're working in a legal business. You front a local gang leader $5,000 or $10,000 worth of product, and you're expecting the wholesale price plus your cut of street sales in a month, and you find out that that gang leader you chose in this particular pueblo snorted half the coke with his crew. And that's why you get killed over here. Okay, because there's no court to go to. You can't sue them, and that's the peril of working in an illegal industry, is that all problems are resolved by death, torture, or threats because there's no law. But you can kind of take two steps back and go, man, if I opened up a TV business and I imported like 500 TVs from Japan, and I gave 100 of them to a retail shopfront owner in San Jose, and I gave them on consignment, he didn't have to pay me back the wholesale price till he sold them, plus my percentage of retail. And I found out he gave half the TVs away to family and friends. How would you feel? So, I mean, this stuff is all kind of understandable, even though it's illegal. And I wouldn't consider it evil. I would just consider it to be the ongoing play between power, ego, spirit, self, soul, as we go through these incarnations, and nothing based on the little I've seen of my soul record, which a lot of it they hide from me because I think I would have a nervous breakdown if I saw all of it. I think I just know I was a nasty, nasty piece of shit. And so some of it's hidden from me, but you can figure it out in your life, into the family you've been born into. You can figure out who you are. You don't need to go to regression therapy with Dolores Cannon. The signs of who you've been in the past are all represented in the life you're living now. Okay? I don't know why people they complicate it to make money and to open up regression hypnotherapy businesses and work comfortably from home and make $150,000. That's why they do it. It's all about money. So you go into this state, and once you go into that state, your normal mind is gone. So, like I said, you become unaware of your body. You become unaware of your mind. But unlike the dark world, when you're working on the right-hand path, you're not alone. You're surrounded by this energy that is extremely loving. It's like recharging your soul to deal with this world. And if you're not getting that out of your prayer or meditation, study a few more systems and see if you can access that, because that's the regeneration that you need. Okay? That is the regeneration that you need. And as you continue to do those regenerative exercises, you're able to cope with life much better than most people. And ultimately, you will get to a point where you're able to live the life you want to live because you've broken down all your programming. And that's another thing that this state does, is it wipes your hard drive. It starts to break down programming. It's the opposite of watching TV or listening to the news. And if more people meditated, they would not be getting away with what they're getting away with now. But consciousness is so low, right? Everybody thinks they're so smart because they've got 7 or 8 years of post-secondary education. Don't you tell me, I've got a PhD in such and such. You don't even understand what true intelligence is until you begin the consciousness work I'm describing. There is no intelligence. You're a human database who's memorized a bunch of stuff and is applying it in a profession, whether it be geology, environmental conservation, accounting, law. You've made a database of your consciousness, and your professors and your mentors, if you articled to become a lawyer, have taught you a little bit of strategy and conceptualization about how to use that database of information to win for your clients. It's not intelligence, okay? It's not like a lawyer understands law the way chapter 4 of The Devil in Us explains what law really is to you. And you should reread that chapter. At a friend's behest, I reread that chapter because he kept going on about it, and I'm going, man, this sounds so great. What am I missing? I wrote it, and he's brought it up in 3 or 4 conversations. So I sat down and read it again after 2 years, and I went, yeah, now I get it. And imagine, I wrote it, and I'm reading it 2 years, and I'm going, yeah, I get what he's saying. It's just so powerful, that chapter, but it explains what the law really is from the perspective of true intelligence, and true intelligence is spiritual perception. So there's very little intelligence on this planet now. You could the only thing that's keeping us convinced we're smart is the technology. And most of the technology is coming from very negative sources. Extraterrestrial races that want to depopulate us, or demonic influences that want to punish us. That's where most of the intelligence behind the technology is coming. If you think this is an evolution forward, the only person who could say something like that is somebody with no spiritual intelligence. People who have spiritual intelligence, they come to the realization very quickly that the world is enough, like I said in yesterday's or 2 days ago podcast. The world is enough. You don't need all the technology. You need shelter, you need you need to operate like a normal human being and balance out your human energies. That means getting a wife. That means investing yourself in something meaningful. For most people, that's raising children. And then there's the work you do. And in the past, work, what we call stupid work, what we disrespect now, the simple work like manual labor, or, building the work of building this earthbag house was very spiritual. Because every day my son's up here working, he's going, well, we're going to live here. This is going to be pretty comfortable. And we're doing it all. And so it was kind of beautiful. But work used to be kind of spiritual as well. Because again, you're going into this state of mind where you become unaware of the mind. And you just get into the flow of your work. And so now all the work is mental. And this is one of the reasons so many people have mental imbalances now. They're Just like your body gets sore from working, your mind. I don't think the human mind was meant to be used the way we're using it now. Okay? And now, when you look at the ET intelligence and the spacecraft and everything, that's interdimensional technology. They're going from a physical reality to a non-physical reality. You can talk wormholes and all this shit, but that's all they're doing. Do you know that there are records of spiritual masters who could do this on the planet without a spaceship? Meaning, this is all true. I mean, like I said, I have been studying this stuff my whole life. Okay, this has been my NFL, my NBA, my Major League Baseball, whatever kind of crazy and stupid habits men get into to kill time. Mine has been the study of scripture. I don't know why this is. Yeah, it was just baked into this incarnation, okay? And I've read things to this day, I can hardly believe them. You should all read a book called Opening the Dragon Gate, the biography of the present living Grand Master of the Dragon sect of Taoism. I think he's still alive. He would be in his 90s now. This is the guy who teaches all the guys who teach all the guys who teach the traditional Chinese medicine licensed clinics around the world. And there was a biography of his life published by Shambhala Press a number of years ago. It's called Opening the Dragon, opening the Dragon Gate, or I forget. I'll figure it out and put it in a note. Um, and some of the stuff you read in that is mind-boggling, and a lot of it correlates to the stories I've heard from my super soldier friends who've been put through the programs. So one of the things they do in advanced Taoism, if they're trying to prepare you for mastery, and you've been selected at a young age based on their reading of your aura, at some point your masters are going to kill you for 3 days, and then they're going to bring you back to life, just like Christ. Okay, so if you think this is the only place this story exists, you just haven't done your homework. Okay? So they did that to this guy. When he was about 14 or 15 years old, there was a big ritual. His masters, I think they put him in a bathtub or something, and they buried the bathtub he was underground with no oxygen for 3 days. And then they dug him back up and brought him back to life. There are stories of masters on this planet in various disciplines of the spiritual arts who were able to, if they wanted to talk to somebody, they could go to that place in the world they were as consciousness, and from the molecules in that space reconfigure a second physical body like the one they're sitting in with their eyes closed doing this. And then the body appears and they physically talk to the person and they're physically there. It's not an astral projection. Their feet are hitting the floor, their hand is knocking on the door. And then when the conversation's over, the master just disappears, the molecules dissolve, and the second body is returned to whatever they built it from, air molecules or whatever. So this is why the spiritual life is still the most fascinating thing for me, and why extraterrestrials are not that big a deal. And the parallels between the extraterrestrial stuff and the spiritual stuff are unbelievable. It's basically the same stuff we're talking about. But the spiritual stuff goes much further. And um, and these extraterrestrials aren't that much smarter than us either. And this we're being convinced they are because everything is about making the human being feel stupid now. This is what the Albert Pike Kabbalistic program beginning in the early 20th century has been about. Really degrading the human race. It began with all the science, and then they went after all the silly superstitions in the religion. And I'm not saying that superstitions didn't exist in the religions, but they threw the baby out with the bathwater. They threw magical consciousness out with the superstition, and magical consciousness was real. And they knew it, which is why they continued to study it in the MK Ultra program. They were trying to create a certain kind of human being that would be like a kind of yogic master, but their utility of these consciousness powers, which were put into the person by extreme trauma, would be harnessed for negativity. And I don't think the creator likes that too much. I don't think the creator would blame the super soldier per se. It's just horrible what's done to these people. Rape, abuse, witnessing of child murder. Just break them down, break them down, break them down. Just got to take a moment to regroup here. Ah, yeah. So I'm like 30 minutes into the podcast and I haven't answered my first question yet. How do I know these things? So when you go into that state of consciousness, sometimes when you're there or sometimes when you're just, it depends where you are. I mean, if you're in a region of high spiritual energy, there's going to be no prophecy there. There's going to be none of the psychic stuff that everybody freaks out about. How did you know that? But as you start to come down, that's when you'll see the stuff. When you come out of that samadhi state and you come out of that consciousness where you're completely aware that you exist, that you are, but you have no consciousness of your mind or your body, and you're not asleep. I don't think meditation could be explained any more clearly than I've just explained it to you. Maybe David Lynch did a better job, okay? And he talks about going into the transcendent space, and he correlates it to modern physics and stuff. Good on him. I'm not going to use physics as a crutch. I'm just going to explain it to you from my own personal experience. So sometimes when you go through these information or these, I don't know what I would call them. I don't want to use any of the colloquialisms like a download or anything like that, but let's just say it literally. You just see something here. You just see it. But the image is so clear. You go, what is that? And you remember it, you come out of your meditation, you write it down, and then the waking mind, as you're going around smoking a cigar, then you start to think about it. So the spirit gave you some data, and now it's your job to figure out what the data means. And generally, if you get spiritual data, the physical correlates will pop up in anywhere almost immediately after the meditation or within 2 or 3 days. And so when you tie off those two things, the inner experience and the outer corroboration, because there's no way that thing I saw in my mind's eye could appear in my life in 24 hours, and I wasn't looking for it, and it just pops up, and there's something to read, and it tells me all I needed to know about what spirit showed me in my third eye. And that's how you tie it together. I call that a tie off, and they're very important. I don't believe anything that I just see. For me, my request to the creator is, if you want me to believe this is real, tie it off once, twice, or 3 times, because I'm really obstinate to accepting this. And that's how it works. And that's how I know what I know. And it's not scientific, and you can laugh at it if you want. You can discard it if you want. But I assure you that the people at the top echelons of this negative hierarchy that's trying to take over the world right now, they're using a similar method of aggregating reality and understanding reality. But they're not doing it to create a self-realized being, a person who becomes a realized particulate of the divine. They're doing it to weaponize consciousness in the timeline and to hack everything to go in their favor and to turn everybody else into slaves. Okay, and that's why this is a spiritual war. And there's a bunch of people out there yelling that over and, oh, we're in a spiritual war. We're in a spiritual war. Well, what are you doing about it? Are you meditating 2 hours a day and grounding divine energy into this 3D hologram so the morphic field can combat the negativity that's moving in the collective unconscious? Are you doing that? No, you're watching YouTube videos all day and telling people it's a spiritual war, but never picking up your weapons. And prayer is a weapon too, especially in this war. Prayer is a weapon. Muslims pray. I don't think we're going to win this thing in the Middle East. Anyways, it's funny because I never know what I always have an idea what I think I'm going to talk about sometimes when I queue up to podcast, and then I do an intro and I go off track for like 35 minutes, and I haven't even begun what I was going to talk about today. So, um there's only about 15 minutes left, so in a 50-minute podcast, so I may as well get to it. So throughout history, there have been rules about warfare. War was something we accepted as human beings. We accepted it, and this is why cultures produced Spartans, the Greeks. This is why countries produced the IDF in Israel. This is why the native populations created a warrior class, and they would train and practice, because we all accept that there's conflict down here. And in accepting that conflict, we sort of set up rules. Okay, so it was the acceptance of the fact that the human animal is a violent animal. And occasionally wars happen. And war, as I said, is the number one pastime of human beings. Okay, so the number one pastime. This is a war planet. And in many ways, this is a war universe we're in. You can't set up a free will dual universe and not expect war. So the creator set this up to see how through conflict people return to the divine. That's the purpose of this universe. Other universes are different. The creator can throw particulates of itself into the formation of new worlds and have them go through the life process down there for same period of time, billions of years, and then reach a state of awareness where that individuated particulate of the creator's energy returns to the creator, self-aware of itself as an individual particulate, which means that the creator can now dispatch that particulate to new worlds to be an avatar, to be a teacher, to be all. It's kind of a big deal to go through the whole cycle. But I don't think every universe is like this one. Not every universe is free will. This is a free will one. And so in free will, you have war. And in war, there are rules. You generally don't attack women. You generally don't attack children. They've habitually were taken as slaves, you know. I'm not quite sure what the slave existence is like, but well, in a sense, we all know what the slave system is like, because the money system is an elegant reproduction of the slave system. So when you see the big Hollywood big shot being photographed by TMZ, and they've got the two or three lackeys walking beside them, those are their personal assistants, and they're paid, they have their freedom, but they're basically slaves. But you could be a slave in the Roman system, meet another slave, fall in love, and have a baby. It wasn't like they controlled every aspect of your life. And so you just had to show up to serve whoever it was you were serving. So if you were serving the cousin of Marcus Aurelius or something at their state, you had your routine things to do, like a butler and all of that stuff. You got to do the laundry, you got to do this, you got to do that. And we say you were a slave because you couldn't leave that position. But when you actually look what you did on a day-by-day basis and how you were remunerated for it, well then, it was almost like an employee in some ways. Okay? So there've always been rules in war. I think the Japanese were quite fanatical about this, and the Chinese too, the art of war with Sun Tzu. Okay? Now, if you have to go to war, the mindset you want is, I'm going to continue to persist in this endeavor until my enemy's heart opens and they see what I'm trying to show them. If you're morally and spiritually correct in your position of the war. And the moment their hearts open, and that's usually done by getting the shit beat out of them, it's an ego realignment and a rebasement of consciousness to absolute humility because you've been defeated. Anyone who's ever been a street fighter knows this. When you knock someone out and they come back to consciousness 2-3 minutes later, they look at you and they go, "Yeah, okay, whatever you say, I deserve that. What happens next?" They say, "Okay, well, don't ever do this again. We're good." And they say, thank you," and they're very thankful and they leave. Whereas a minute before I knock them out, they're like, "I'm gonna kill you, fuck you," and and so built into us is the mechanism of reconciliation through war. It's all there. Study history, study yourself, study human nature. It's not hard to figure out. I'm not saying anything you don't know. So why am I telling you these things? Well, we've entered into a new expression of warfare now, which is as ugly as it gets. It's worse than Napoleon. It's worse than Genghis Khan and the Mongol hordes. It's worse than anything. Okay, because the way Jews war is dictated by their Bible. And when they believe that their God has commanded them to war with somebody, the commandment entails destroying every living being in that tribe or peoples, which in the eschatology of Judaism is always a family tree that descends from the children of Noah. Okay? And I guess the flood was about 6,000 years ago, 6 or 7,000 years ago. And their prophecies tell them about, and their system tells them certain things about these tribes. And they allege, and I'm not saying that they don't have this. I don't believe they do, but I'm in no position to say that they don't. Okay? They allege to have a direct communication with the creator, and the creator tells them which races can stay on the planet and which races can't. So basically, Jews are now at this point in history announcing to the entire world that they are the officially God-sanctioned genociders of the human race. And if you think I'm exaggerating, if you think I'm being hyperbolic, you're just not listening to what they're saying. Because I'm telling you literally how it is. I'm not embellishing for or against them. This is just how it is. And so how does this manifest? Well, not only are we in a war now, we're in a war in which the whole world is watching. We didn't have the kind of broadband coverage we had in the Iraq war. We had the internet, but it was only, most households got the internet around 1997 or sometime around 2000. I was an early adopter because I worked in software, so I got the internet in 1997 at home. And I used to have to plug a phone jack into my computer. If you go back as far as I do, remember when computers, laptop computers and computers came with phone jacks inside them and you had the dial up and everything? That's how far I go back on this. And everything was wired. There was no Wi-Fi yet or anything. And there was certainly none of what I would call this citizen journalism where anyone walking around with a decent cell phone, Android or iPhone, $500 or more, was literally walking around with a camera and a microphone that could rival any news crew's equipment. And so the whole world is watching now. And there's no way, and that's another thing that's going on in this time we live. It's like there's a form of judgment going on. And I realize, given that the whole Abrahamic eschatology is about God judging us, and by the way, God doesn't judge us. If any Catholic priest says that to you, I don't care, Chad Rippinger or any of these guys, just punch them in the fucking face. Okay? God doesn't judge us. We are God. Now, the Abrahamics don't like it when people say that. They think it's a satanic statement. Okay? But you folks have been listening to me long enough. You know what I mean when I say that. In our final form, in our final state of consciousness, in this evolutionary trajectory, our individual consciousness merges with the God consciousness. Ergo, we become God. Okay? And this creates a lot of very confusing language, you know? And so the Christian eschatology would have us believe that Christ is the biological child of God, impregnated by an angel. And to me, the whole narrative is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Some kind of extraterrestrial eugenics going on there in the Christ story. Okay? But nonetheless, this phrasing is quite common in religious circles. Okay? You very often hear the expression God in flesh for certain masters who have attained a certain level in the Indian systems of unfoldment. Yoga, Sant Mat, and Sikhism, and various other internal cultivation programs. They say that's God in flesh, but they don't say the Son of God. Like, and the reason they have this in Christianity is it fits the whole genealogy narrative of what is ostensibly an extremely chemical religion. You know how I've delimited between physical, chemical, and transcendent consciousness? Most of what we're talking about in the Abrahamic system is chemical consciousness. Okay? I say it's chemical consciousness because it all revolves around who birthed you and what genetics do you have. Okay? Um, and I think that's all sort of ridiculous. I mean, you are sort of bound by your genetics, but deep meditative practice can actually change your genetic structure as well. You're actually deoxyribonucleic acid. So getting back on track, we've gone full crazy now. There's no coming back from this. The strikes on the oil refinery adjacent to Tehran are so severe that Tehran is under a black cloud of acidic gasoline smoke now that is toxic to inhale, and they've got black rain falling because the oil, the black clouds from the burning oil refinery go up into the atmosphere, and if rain comes, they produce rain, and those toxic, chemically rich droplets of water come from the sky. They can hit your skin and burn your skin. They've gone into the sewer system and ignited. And now all of Tehran, which is a city of 9 million people, has these fires going on everywhere. You don't begin a war that you hope to exit with friends and have a treaty with people. You don't begin a war by blowing up 170 little girls 12 years and younger. That's a satanic ritual. And so, right on the heels of Jeffrey Epstein, by releasing the files, Trump is trying to say we're not a satanic society. We're going to clean all of this up. And then he goes straight into a satanic war, using war as the cover for occult rituals. And the murder of children in that fashion is always an occult ritual. Okay? And it was no accident. It's impossible the way those missiles are guided for them to hit the wrong target. Okay? It's impossible. They knew exactly what that was, and they did it twice. And then after they blew up the school, they waited like 10 minutes till they could see on satellite a bunch of people running in. And who would those people be? They would be people in the neighborhood in shock over their children just getting bombed. They're running in desperate to save their 8-year-old daughter, and U.S. tactical and Israeli tactical units go, we got another gathering of people there. Send another tomahawk in. Kill the children, kill the parents, kill the teachers. Make everybody, every civilian in a city sick. Now, if that doesn't worry you, I'm going to explain to you why it should. Because what these fucking morons have done, Trump and Bibi, is send a message out to the whole world that this is how they should now treat Western European and North American citizens. The US and Israel just said through what they've done that when we go to war, everything is on the table now. Your children. Basically, it's Yahweh's war mandate. We're fighting under Yahweh's war mandate. If you see an infant left alive, crack its skull. I want that whole genome wiped out. That's what Jew God wants. Another indication that Jew God is not anything you or I would call God. It's Jew God. And Jew God, I don't think, is a very pleasant entity. So there's no getting at if you were the Iranian leadership, would you make peace at this point? Now keep in mind as we go through this, the goal of the rabbis is to blow up the world. Their goal is to blow up the world. Now, this does not have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. This guy on the other side of the mountain, Shunyamurti, he's out there telling everybody it's the end of the world and the world's going to be destroyed by fire. Well, if that's true, why did he move here? If this death is inescapable, why is he hedging his bet and moving to Costa Rica? So I finally got really curious about this guy, and I did a deep dive on him yesterday. And lo and behold, it turns out that Shunyamurti is an Ashkenazi Jew. Now, I don't know what to make of that, but I am so convinced, and it's always Ashkenazi. I'm not saying the Jews, okay? It's not like there's a Sephardic Jewish takeover of the world. There's an Ashkenazi takeover of the world. And if you don't know who the Ashkenazi are, they're the converts that lived in Khazaria, which is what we call Ukraine today. And they worshipped very, very dark entities. They were basically living in 800 AD, 700 AD, the same way the more primitive human collectives lived in the Babylonian system and in the system that worshipped Moloch. They had crawled through history in Eastern Europe and were still living this way. And the Tsar of Russia told them, choose one of the Abrahamic religions or we're going to wipe you all out. And they chose Judaism. And in a sense, resurrected Judaism because it was a nearly dead religion. Talmudic Judaism, anyways. So they're the ones. So basically, he's giving Chabad eschatology, and eschatology is the theology of the end of the world. Shunyamurti is giving us Chabad eschatology from under the linen of a yogi. I find that extremely disingenuous. I don't think he's an enlightened being. I've been around enlightened beings. He's not an enlightened being. And then I did a deep dive on yogic eschatology, which is incredibly deep and rich because their astrology goes, 2-3 dimensions deeper than what people like Robert Phoenix deal with. That's just an astral astrology. That's your physical and your astral. Indian astrology, holy cow, man. They're the ones that mapped out the yugas. They're the ones who've told us that we're in the 72nd instantiation of this universe. And they're right, by the way. Even the universe dies and is reborn. And the souls that were training in it, they come back in and reincarnate again. And there is absolutely no yogic eschatology out there saying that this is the end of the world. And he's over there preaching every major system in the world prophesizes the end of the world by fire now. No, they don't. Chabad does, and the Vatican does. And there's no yogic teachers out there backing up what he's saying. He's this rogue lunatic mixing Freudian psychoanalysis with Eastern meditation. Okay? Now, I know some of you who listen to me go and see him. I actually have listeners on the Isn't that a coincidence that people listen to this podcast, the Talamanca Review, and they actually visit the Talamanca Mountains on the Pacific side and go and visit this guy? And I've spoken to people who've sat in front of him and received what's called darshan, which is, and this happens in all Eastern systems. You sit across from a high practitioner and you make eye contact, and there's an energetic transference. And the result of that transference is not what I would call anything spiritual. It's very psychic. When I heard it, it reminded me very much of praying with the Sufis and the energy that would come down through into the prayer circle, and it would come from another dimension. But what people don't realize, and the reason I tell so many stories, you know, just because you have a multidimensional experience doesn't mean you're dealing with divine energies. This is what the Sufis taught me. Okay? So when I say something, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking from the bigoted chauvinism of somebody who has entrenched themselves in a religious doctrine. Like a Christian telling you, oh, that's the devil. Don't go with that. Jesus is the only way. I'm not saying that. But I am saying there's a lot of really bad systems out there. Look at Andrew Bartzis. Wowed a lot of people for about a decade, didn't he? Then got revealed. This guy across the mountain, the Ashkenazi, the Chabad Lubavitch Ashkenazi yogi, you're not going to get anything going to that ashram. I usually don't come out and pick on people this hard, but there's something about this guy I feel I have to say it. Okay? I feel I have to say it, you know? So we've hit a point of no return now. You can't boil you can't deliberately hit an oil refinery and toxify and light on fire a modern city of 9 million people, which is going to damage women and children and babies, and tell me that that's normal warfare. There is no going back to the United Nations for the United States and Israel now. They have embarked on a course of action that has completely and utterly separated them from the rest of humanity. I want you to think about that for a moment. And I want you to reimagine what your relationship with Donald Trump should be at this point, and Pete Hegseth, and Marco Rubio, and all these people bringing us this stuff, like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham. And they're fanatics. They're either fanatically Zionistic and they study the Kabbalah, which I don't think, or they're compromised, or they're addicted to the money. But they're definitely going to hell, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, so we're at a point of no return now. So there was the bombing of the oil refinery, the hitting of the school. I mean, just imagine that if the United States went to war with somebody and our enemy was deliberately targeting elementary schools in Tennessee or Arkansas or Ohio. Imagine how you'd feel. And if you don't feel anything for the Iranians, then you've been infected with this genocidal consciousness, which is characterized by the Jewish scripture and the Jewish people. And I'll tell you, you want a little prophecy? I've given you this prophecy before. The nut bar on the other side of the Ashkenazi yogi on the other side of the mountain is not correct. This is not the end of the world. It's the end of that ideology. It's the end of that system of religious practice, the Jewish system. That's what's being taken out of the world. And that's the true definition of the chosen people. And they've been chosen by God to become an object lesson for the rest of humanity, the way the warden in a prison will make an example out of a prisoner so the rest of the prisoners fall in line. And I'm not saying that God is a warden. That's the only metaphor I could come up with off the top of my head. You're witnessing the end of the Jews. And the longer that Donald Trump is sucking Jew cock, you could be, because anything connected to it will be taken into the black hole as well, the destructive black hole. So you better hope and pray that Donald Trump lets go of the Jerusalem cock he's holding on to, BB and the IDF leader and everything. You better hope he gets that cock out of his ass and separates America from it, or you're going with them. And that's really what's going on this planet right now. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of the Jews. But because they think they're the whole world and they influence so much, the toxicity of their theology has entered people's minds and people think it's the end of the world. All these fucking idiotic Protestants running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Okay? Now, to be fair, there are things around the changing of a cycle, and we're going through a big change now on this planet. There are things that can happen in these shifts which can be really bad. Okay? So you know how we have ghosts, like people who die but they can't really get up into the higher regions, and so they're non-physical but they're still hanging around the physical world. If that happens to you, if you die in a state like that because you've done no spiritual work and you've run down all of your natural connection with the divine that every child has when they're born, if you die in that state in one of these transitional cycles, you could get ghosted for a long time, like a billion years or more. Okay, so there are things that make you go, "Oh, fuck." I'm not saying there aren't, but it's not the end of the world. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.